Chapter 37 The Prophets of the Shroud. Judging from the clock in the entertainment center, Trig and the Cascade crew were locked inside the decontamination chamber for about 15 hours before something happened. Two security contractors came to the door and asked for Trig. "Just the boy?" Captain Cantor asked. "What about the rest of us?" "Master Vitruvius wants to speak with Trig Ralpakin and Tenna Honora, not you," the contractor said curtly. Trig was taken back to the security checkpoint, and a few moments later, Tenna showed up, escorted by two more guards. One of them looked alarmed. "We checked that cell, just like you asked," said the guard. "The old man is missing. Cameras show the door never opened." "Sounds like I lost a bet," replied the head guard. "Master Vitruvius was right about that old man. All right then, we follow his orders. Start scanning the ventilation system for large clusters of nanites. Call me when you find something." "Sounds like Ponico got out," Trig whispered to Tenna. "What's he doing?" Tenna asked. "Guess we'll find out later," Trig replied. Trig and Tenna were led through the checkpoint and out of the dockyards. Once they stepped through the terminal, the children were inside the Shroudwalker Enclave. It was unlike anything Trig had ever seen before. A vast temple and monastery complex had been carved into the asteroid. The enclave interior took the shape of a vast, well-lit cave network. Electric cables and piping ran along the walls and ceiling. High above, impossibly high above, the canyon walls gave way to open skies. Trig could see the astral scar high above the station. In fact, Trig could see through it, if only a little. He could see, as though looking down from above, a great city. The only detail that caught Trig's attention was a single flag waving over a skyscraper. A simple bicolor banner. The bottom stripe was green, and the top stripe blue. For some reason he could not comprehend, Trig found this banner strangely familiar. The Olenbar contractors guided the children to the cavernous opening in a nearby rock face. The cave was blocked off from the rest of the monastery by a heavy gate. There were no guards or control panels, so Trig had no idea how the gate would be opened. But when the Olenbar guards drew near, the gate swung open, seemingly of its own accord. "We can go no further," the blue-skinned guard replied. "Follow the summons." Trig and Tenna were left alone. They each looked at each other for a moment before Trig said, "Do you feel that?" Tenna nodded. A force, invisible but inexorable, was gently pulling the two children. It was not strong enough to make them move, but it was impossible to ignore. Trig offered his hand to Tenna. She took it, and he led the way. The passageway beyond the gate became like a tunnel. The only source of light was from the ceiling, where small crystals were embedded in the rock face. Each one emitted a warm yellow light that flickered like a candle. After a few minutes of walking in spellbound silence, Trig and Tenna entered a large chamber. As soon as they entered the cavern, Trig and Tenna froze in place. They found themselves in the center of some kind of circular meeting hall. 29 chairs, throne-like in appearance, were arranged in a circle, facing one another, and, by extension, the two children. Looking around, Trig realized that he and Tenna had just walked into a meeting in progress. A person dressed in red robes occupied each seat, leaving no space for Trig and Tenna. The two children were being observed from all angles. The conclave consisted of all three species that called the luminous frontier home. There were Nagyari, Olenbar, and Sutherians here. Both men and women were present, but no one was younger than age 60. All but one conclave member was bareheaded. The person Trig guessed to be the leader wore a hood and veil, meaning it was impossible to see what species or sex this person was. Looking around for a few moments, one of the psionics, a Sutherian, spoke. "Welcome, Trig Ralpakin, son of the great Khan Malum Ralpakin. Welcome, Tenna Honora, daughter of Emperor Kantovestum. You have come to collect a relic held by our brother, the venerable Vitruvius." "Yes," Trig said quietly. "We are trying to—" "We know," a female Nagyari interrupted. "Even before you arrived here, we were on guard." She gestured to the veiled stranger, who was seated next to Vitruvius. The veiled person stood up and began to speak in the Nagyari language. Vitruvius translated his words into Olenbar. "For thousands of years, this sacred conclave has devoted itself to the study of the Shroud. Our goal is to enlighten, to elevate those around us. We observed the actions of the great Khan with great interest. He sought to conquer the Shroud and the planes above it. I cautioned Ralpakin against this. I reminded your father that this universe is nothing but the shadow of a dream. Ralpakin replied, 'My destiny is clear. Do not stand in my way.' We never spoke again. After Ralpakin's death, Brother Vitruvius came to us, and we thought the danger had passed. That was until the beginning of war on Sutheria, and a warning came to this enclave. A warning to be wary of thieves sent by Alex Camber, thieves who sought to take the last remnants of the old life Brother Vitruvius left behind." The elder paused, and so did Vitruvius. Tenna spoke in a nervous tone. "But Vitruvius said he would help us. He said he would let us take the Keystone shard." The elder spoke again, and Vitruvius translated. "Yes, Brother Vitruvius did say those things, because you intended to ask permission to take it, though in the back of your minds your shipmates were plotting to use force if permission was not given. Furthermore, we, the prophets of the Shroud, condone your intentions to destroy this secret project left behind by your father, Trig Ralpakin. We do not know what it is, but I and many others are convinced it is a weapon, one that could be used to make war upon the Shroud and its inhabitants. Were it to be used, the current conflicts among Sutherians, Olenbar, and Nagyari would seem but minor trifles, unworthy of attention. So many words to say that our goals are aligned." Vitruvius took a moment to speak for himself. "As I've said, children, the days of Malum Ralpakin's aspirations are behind me, doubly so if my former brother continues to pursue his more mundane quest for power's sake. I have called you here for two reasons. First, to give you what you have come here to collect, and second, to offer our help in retrieving the last Keystone shard." Trig was so happy to hear this news that he started to speak, to put his thoughts into words, but Tenna was faster. "Shards," she corrected Vitruvius. "There are still 2 more of them out there we have to find." The elder raised his hand and then spoke, this time in Olenbar. "Silence! All silence!" Tenna shut her mouth. Everyone held stock still. Trig wondered what was going on, a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. Then the elder pointed at Trig, speaking in Nagyari. "The boy senses danger." Everyone looked at Trig. Tenna's face brightened, and she spoke up. "Oh, Trig has this thing where sometimes he can sense really bad things before they happen." "It's not all that," Trig started to say, but then he trailed off. That pit in his stomach was rapidly changing into the old familiar sense of dread. Just like on Edelton or at Venka Urbo, Trig's whole body was suddenly on edge, as though his fight or flight reflex was being triggered. The Elder, still pointing at Trig, spoke again. Vitruvius translated. "We are all in immediate danger," he said. "Enemies are at our gates." Almost simultaneously, a wave of psionic energy rippled out and away from each member of the Conclave. Buffeted about by the sudden pulse, Trig knew that the Conclave was reaching out to the MSI security contractors. Psionic signals echoed across the station, and after a few moments, an alarm began to sound.